Nigeria's debt profile has worsened in the first quarter of the year as the country's debt stock rose by 2.04 trillion naira to hit 41.60 trillion naira. The Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, says government's borrowings are done for capital project execution and that it has the ability to meet its obligations to creditors. President Buhari's administration over the years has been under a series of attacks on the country's rising debt levels. But the government always maintains the debt was within the stipulated ratio based on the country's GDP. However, the International Monetary Fund last week warned that except the federal government put in place adequate measures to improve revenue generation, its entire earnings may be spent servicing debt by the year 2026. And joining us in the studio now to help us understand if Nigeria is indeed broke, as has been peddled in many quarters, Nnaemeka Obiaraeri is a financial expert and managing director, Taurus Capital. Good morning and welcome.
Thanks.
So, is Nigeria broke?
Nigeria is broke, but redeemable.
We are trying to make the distinction for us.
Yes. Very, very broke. If you look at the numbers, I laugh when people try to draw this debt to GDP analogy in equating Nigerian economy to that of the other developed economies. Look at the budget performance of 2021. We spent 2.96 trillion naira servicing the existing debt. As at the first quarter of 2022, we've already spent 896 billion. If you project it, we'll be spending about 3.56 trillion in 2022 servicing our debt services. Now, if you look at that budget, it's predicated on a 6.25 trillion naira budget deficit, which will require fresh borrowing outside the 40-something trillion that we already have in existence. And I look at it critically. We have 6.86 trillion naira recurrent expenditure. Out of this 6.86 trillion, 4.11 trillion is supposed to be used to take care of less than 900,000 Nigerians, the political office holders, and the civil servants. Juxtapose this, you will see clearly that if you add 6.86 trillion to the projected 3.56 trillion, we have over 10.3 trillion naira that we're going to be wasting in debt and non-debt recurrent expenditure in a country based on the past budget performance that may not generate up to 6 trillion naira in both oil and non-oil revenue. So critically, anybody telling you that they are borrowing to fund capital expenditure is deceiving us, because even the accountant general, the new accelerator, clear they were borrowing to pay salary. If you look at it critically, if our revenue profile based on past budget performances is about 5.5 to 6 trillion, and we're going to be spending 10.3 trillion naira on debt and non-debt recurrent expenditure, not capital project. That simply means from the day one, we have a 4 trillion naira deficit on recurrent expenditure that is not on capital project. This is not sustainable.
Is this an error in judgment, or is this something that we can blame the system or personalities for?
Both the system and on leadership. Let us be very honest. I was discussing with somebody that said Nigeria is like that drunken seller whose father left an asset, a palm plantation worth about 1.8 trillion, 1.8 billion. Rather than go to clear it, to harvest it, to produce, he's at Ojuelegba loading buses. That is the kind of, let me tell you, this country has huge potentials.
Or you can say that it's like a drunken sailor whose father has a plantation of, where you drink, palm, is it palm?
Palmy, yes.
Palmy.
Raffia palm.
Raffia palm.
Yes.
The plantation is there.
Massive, 1,000 hectares.
And with that plantation, rather than sell it, it is drinking
the wine.
Just drinking the wine.
Just drinking the wine.
And then when any tree dies, he allows it to die.
God bless
then
you,
goes
Sam.
to the next tree, drinks it to
God bless you, Sam.
And then
So
at the end of the day, he has left, the father gave him a plantation, he has now left it a desert.
Exactly. This is a country with huge potential. Let me tell you, it's very simple. The 6.8 trillion that we waste on recurrent expenditure can actually be cut down by 60%.
How?
Very simple. 4.1 trillion is for the salaries and wages and pensions. The remaining 2-point-something trillion is the profligacy and corruption, travel expenses, newspapers, and whatever that can be cut down.
Medical trips.
Medical trips. Convoy of 1,000 vehicles for those officials that are not supposed to be so.
For instance, we're just discussing the problem with the Chief Justice and so on. One of their problems is actually one of these foreign trips that, you know, it's like the Chief Justice goes on his own foreign trip. Where's our own foreign trip?
Exactly. And you look at it critically. This is an economy that has potentials. What we have is not, we have two major problems in Nigeria. The issue of atrocious, huge cost of governance and the issue of depleting revenue that can be ramped up. We talk about, look at South Africa. South Africa debt to GDP is about 78%. They do know why they are not bothered. Their total external revenue debt is about $175 billion. But South Africa annually generates about $106 to $110 billion. Less than 55 million population. Look at Singapore. Look at Dubai, United Arab Emirates. You will see, the problem is not even the debt. What are you borrowing to invest in? Egypt has debt to about 85%, but they are ramping up revenue. Nigeria has the capacity annually to generate over $200 billion, even from non-oil revenues. We've done analysis of it. We've done sectorial analysis, sector by sector, from maritime to transportation, to aviation, to agric. Netherlands, 43,000 square kilometers. Half of the year is spent under snow and winter. Nigeria, Niger State has 2 times the land mass of Netherlands. Benue State, Oyo, in fact, Oyo State and Benue State, Ocean and Benue put together, can generate twice what Netherlands generates.
He said the gold in Zamfara alone can make Zamfara look like Dubai.
Exactly.
That's what he said.
And most of
Zamfara alone.
And most of
I heard people are just killing themselves there on top of.
I asked this question.
Illegal refining.
Why do you think the oil and gas industry upstream is coordinated? Because of the structure. I gave an illustration. If you bring in a Barrat Gold, one of the biggest gold mining companies that has revenue of about $10 billion annually, we do the same thing we are doing with oil, with gold and solid minerals. Allocate land to those people that have capacity. I tell you, from the solid mineral alone, we can triple what we make from crude oil.
Femi Falana himself once said the other time when we were talking about borrowing, going to China to borrow and so on, he gave a list of so many assets that we have in this country that if we liquidate them, if we sell them, for instance, I drove past the former building of the Ministry of Communication. I had visited that building in the 90s, early 90s, when they had not moved from Lagos to Abuja. No, not Broad Street. It's on the it's near Obalende.
Yes, Obalende.
There's so many of those buildings.
There are so many of them.
Structures.
You look at that structure. It's what is, if you sell that to any corporation, it's what, I'm not sure, if you sell it for 10 billion, you have not sold it. But it is there lying waste. And that is the story of this country. We are like Ajebota, and a person who's living like an Ajebota, in a poor neighborhood.
And we know our condition.
Sam, let me even tell you the most painful one. I was coming to the studio and I saw long queue of cars waiting to buy PMS at K2 Junction.
Yes.
Now, Sam, this is a country. Remember that as at 1960s to 1970s, between 1974 to 1979, between Gowon and Obasanjo, they built 2 brand new refineries.
Yes.
1974 to 1979, 5 years between Gowon and Olusegun Obasanjo, we built 2 brand new refineries. Obasanjo was such a very pragmatic man. He understood the way forward. He saw the rot in the system. And before he left, he sold the 2 refineries to the Blue Star Consortium, led by Aliko Dangote and Femi Otedola. If that provision had allowed to stand, by now we won't be talking about spending 4 trillion importing white petroleum products. Kachukwu Ibe in 2016 came and told us clearly, let me come. He said that based on, Desiani told us they were importing between 47 million to 52 million liters, which is a Ponzi scheme. Kachukwu Ibe came to power as the Minister for State for Petroleum Resources and the GMD NNPC and told us clearly that our daily consumption was between 28 million to 35 million. And this corroborated what was published by the United States Energy Administration Agency. And we saw it at that level. Sam, tell me, between 2016 till now, the purchasing power of the average Nigerian has gone down. Yes. If you look at the number of cars in Nigeria, 5.6 million out of 11 is in Lagos State.
Absolutely.
And now Lagos State consumes about 60%, which there is no subsidy. But Sam, we are told from 3.5 million liters, they moved it to 50 million liters, 273, 293, 202 million liters. Who are the consumers?
Where are they?
And they will tell you that we are smuggling. Time is not true. Because if you look at the consumption capacities of the neighboring states, from Cameroon to Niger, to Chad, to Togo, to Burkina Faso, to Benin Republic, it's about 9.6 million liters a day combined.
But there is a leak somewhere.
Wait, let me come. Even if you assume, DPR told us in February 28, 2020, that our daily consumption is $38 million, DPR should know better than every other person. Even if you add the 9.6 million liters consumed, let us even assume, without conceding, that the whole West African country are dependent on Nigeria for us to smuggle. If you add it to the figures submitted by DPR, that simply means we'll have about 43 million liters.
Unaccounted for.
Well, Sam, how do we account for the gap between the 102 million liters that NNPC reported and the 42 million liter reality? And do you know the interesting aspect of it? If you look at this, from January to April this year, JP Morgan Chase said that we have not paid a dime into the accounts of NNPC. Where is this money going to? And let me explain to you. What we have here is a clear, concerted, deliberate Ponzi scheme at Abuja. And that is why they have refused to privatize the refineries. That is why they have refused to regulate the market. That is, you can see the Ipman people are very angry. On their own, they've taken the gauntlet to deregulate by themselves. And I don't blame them. As at February 24th, 2022, a liter of the AGO was selling for 248 naira per liter. Today, it is going for 708 naira to 800 naira per liter. And you forgot that even the vessels that bring the product to Nigeria do bunkering, they use diesel. So freight costs have tripled. Absolutely. And this has nothing to do. See, in Saudi Arabia, a liter of the PMA is selling for 270 naira per liter if you convert the riyal to naira. AGO is something. Why? Nigeria has a provision of 45,000 barrels of crude oil every day, reserved for NNPC. If we had deregulated in 2016, removed the subsidy regime when the window provided itself, and privatized those refineries, by now, if you remove the freight cost, remove all the ancillary costs associated with importing PMS and AGO, Nigeria will have been booming.
I was even getting to that you know, all the options that you have given us now appear to be long-term, and now we're in dire straits now. You've said that, okay, Nigeria's situation is redeemable, but then let us also do another post-mortem of how we get to where we are now. These debts obviously get approved by the legislators. So I'm wondering what do they have to say about this? They should, you know, take some form of responsibility, or did they miss something somewhere?
I am sorry to use this word. Nigeria has 2 tribes. The tribe of the impoverished 199 million masses and the tribe of the political elites. Don't get it wrong. They are all the same. They always bring in religion and ethnicity when they want to play Ponzi games among the citizens.
Yes.
These guys in the National Assembly, there was a TI report that clearly stated, it is a report out there. 98% of those in the executive arm of government across all levels are very corrupt. 96% of the legislative arm across all levels are very corrupt. 65% of the judiciary. So these guys know what to do. But I can tell you, by shaking the system, we prevent them from the rent-seeking environment that they've thrived upon. You know, I feel so saddened looking at a country. See, Nigeria has no business being where we are today. We have no business housing the most extreme poor people in the whole world. In 1980, China had 765 million extreme poor people. Nigeria had only about 4.1 million. Today, China has been able to take out over 676 million people. From the extreme, as at 1980, Nigeria had a per capita GDP more than China. There is no skyrocket science about this. All we need is to put in place the right legislative, monetary, and fiscal policy framework, the right constitutional framework, and the right people that are patriots. See, it's one thing. You see, you don't even need to have external knowledge to rebuild Nigeria. We have a very resilient population. Between you and Sam, I'm telling you, if we pick anybody here, even in your studio, who is very patriotic, Mourinho is one of the most decorated coaches. He never plays football. He was able to assemble the right people. His strength of his managerial career is on building, working with strong and athletic players. And he looked towards Africa. That was how he discovered people like Didier Drogba. And they gave him trophies. People like Alex Ferguson never played football to the highest level. But you saw what he did with Manchester United. What we need in Nigeria are patriots at all levels. And I tell you, they can actually make money in government without Allah subjecting each and every one of us to the kind of rubbish we're having today. You may have whatever you like. Olusegun Obasanjo went to work. Somebody told me that he flew with him in British Airways for 6 hours. The man was reading. He wasn't sleeping. Other younger men were sleeping. In 8 years, the man paid off our external debt. Most of the reforms we have today, from GSM to EFCC to ICPC to everything, was brought by Olusegun Obasanjo. He left power, leaving a reserve of 47 billion. Yar'Adua came up and took over and grew the economy to about 8%. Before that, unprepared smiling one called out and took over. He wasn't prepared for governance. And from 2010 till now, Nigeria had been from one hot part of hell to another. See, if Yar'Adua had not died, I bet you, and we had followed that trajectory, this country would have been different from where we are today. The problem we have is that we hand over power to unprepared people. Governance is not about being nice.
At all.
It's not about being the good boy. Exactly. You must have to take the hard decisions. If you have a company today, go to GTB, go to Zenith, go to Shell. When they want to employ you, even if the MD is your brother, if you don't meet the minimum job requirement and key performance indicators, they won't employ you. But here, nepotism, religious jingoism, and rah-rah-ness, as I used to put it, has destroyed this country. And we need to press the reset button. I tell you, this country has potentials. Saudi Arabia is a very huge oil nation. But Saudi Arabia, in 2001, decided to go into date palm production. Over the last 13 years, they've done about 900,000 hectares of dates. The north is desertified. If the north decide today to go to date, and the north of Nigeria is the only place where dates can grow twice in a year, around the whole world. If we do 1 million hectares of date palm production, the north can get about $28 billion. As at 1964-65, we controlled 45% of the global crude palm oil market. Today, that market is $112 billion. If we are sustained that trajectory, Nigeria will be exporting over $45 billion from crude palm oil. Today, Malaysia and Indonesia, that came to Calabar decades ago to pick settlers, are controlling it. Indonesia have even put a freeze on export of crude palm oil. All right,
but you remain the hopeful, and we will rest on that optimism. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, thank you so much for your valuable insights on the program.